Okay, I think we can work with that. Let's bring that to the front. I'm gonna trim off just a little bit more here, just. Part of me was confused for a second why this wasn't lining up right. Well, because, Mr. Strife, you have a big chunk of Centurion in the way. So, that was crisis averted. So, here's this. Got a nice extended draw on that thing. Just checking the trigger hole. It's kind of crowded, but it's not really crowded, I guess. I think it just seems like it. I suppose we could have added the little nub up here, gotten the extended pusher, but I'd rather make it work the way it's supposed to before we go throwing new parts, because we tried to screw something else up. So let's do this. So okay, for sure we can cut off the strife at the top of the hole here. So, okay, so we're getting full travel, we suspect there. Trimming this guy to fit. I'm gonna say let's trim off the actual bump, I guess it is, the actual like trigger face right there. That up to this line, that should get us around the opening there. So we'll nip that guy off, hopefully, without breaking anything. Yeah, the brittleness of this material here is concerning me on its compatibility with the DevCon. I've had some less than positive experiences with stuff like that in the past. Looks like right up to the line, okay. Okay, just trimming off some of the excess stuff on the side of the trigger to help it move back and forth since it's running into parts of the Centurion shell. The little bumps here to kind of help support this slot. I think I'm just gonna clip those off a little bit because they're kind of getting in the way. Ouch. Dang it. Remember, kids, always important to use the right tools. Oops. Okay, getting pretty good smooth travel there. Now let's introduce this guy again. Okay, just double checking that we're getting the same amount of travel, roughly. That's by no means a scientific way of doing it. But let's move on. So I think we can trim, let's see. Now with both of those forward, the rise on the Centurion trigger comes up right behind the wide part of the strife trigger, so I think I'm going to come up just a little bit in there. So this will kind of hook around it just a little bit. Everything else, I think we'll trim off a little bit more of this up to the line. There's just going to be a sliver left, so I think we'll have to use this area to kind of build it up and strengthen it. Okay, let's pull it in a little bit. Looks good on the back. Back here. So, that stuff. Just get some alcohol, rubbing alcohol, to take off the Sharpie marks, if it'll work again. All right. Good enough. So, with this in there, everybody to their forwardmost forwardness. We know that this here is clear and this here is good. So it looks like it comes up in this area and in this area. And it appears that this part here is higher and seems to come in about that far. And this area actually comes in about there. And this area looks like it's about here. So I'm going to try to notch out approximately that. I'm going to be conservative on the cut so we can kind of trim and fit this together good. So I think due to the delicate nature of this material, I'm going to at least cut the end pieces and then we can kind of nip it off. I just don't want to get in there and try to cut it and have it bust a big chunk off like it's kind of been doing in the past. So, okay, I wasn't quite as conservative as intended on those ones. And we kind of have something like that, so let's see how it fits. And as suspected, I need to trim off more. But that's good. In fact, I think I can knock this corner off just a little bit. Ooh. Hey, look at that. Okay, that guy's still doing that thing. We'll take the spring off. Okay. I'm not sure what jumped out, but it made a dingling noise. So, anyway, so we got these pieces locked together, and it goes whoop. So assuming that pulls back all the way, we now have this trigger that goes oh, and we're actually getting full stroke. Trigger's all the way back. That's fitting good there. This drive trigger's bottomed out. Hold that together. Now we're not quite maxed out on the Centurion trigger, but we're maxed out on the pusher. So that means we have at least enough travel. So that's actually I didn't expect it to go together this good. Just for the heck of it, let's hook this guy back up, just to act as kind of a stabilizer. Oh, that's right. We can't be bothered with this guy because he needs a little more room to move. Well, we may incorporate him later. I think we'll get the pieces, well, we'll keep testing a little bit. Once we're happy with it, we'll get the pieces glued together, and then if we need to, we'll see about modifying this guy to support the back end there. So again, we have this guy. This is with the spring load on it. Whew! I didn't expect that to work, honestly. At least not that simply. So one more time, just putting a finger here to kind of support it. It doesn't seem to have an unusual amount of friction or anything. So nice. That's like way nice. And I like how we were able to kind of hug, like we talked before, kind of keying the pieces together, where you have it kind of sticks up here and this piece kind of locks in this way. That way you actually have the materials themselves supporting the joint instead of just relying on glue to hold it together, and then, you know, having any kind of load, you know, working the glue loose, especially since we're kind of suspect at this point on how the DevCon's gonna hold. I think we'll just roughen the heck out of the surfaces everywhere just to double check and make sure the DevCon has every opportunity. If the DevCon doesn't want to stick to this material, again, I'm hoping it does, which if it does, then that's not going to be an issue. But if it doesn't want to stick, then I need to do some research and see what kind of material, because I hate to use something like super glue, because super glue is brittle, and and it holds stuff like crazy usually, but in a situation under a lot of stress, it wouldn't take much for it to just crack and then let go. But as of right now, we have this, and I am pretty tickled with that. In fact, I've got some super glue around here somewhere. I think I'll tack it there just to kind of hold it for testing purposes. Okay, just got some glue on there. Hit it with an accelerator, and so now we have that was just that guy. So I think let's slide that over. And okay, looks like the only issue is moving the little notch here forward a little bit. So I'll move that forward just the same amount, roughly. Now, let's try this. Hoping that there's nothing else hidden on either side of the shell that's going to cause problems for us. Technically, this should stick together and go. Oh, see that? Whoop, 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 whoop. Doesn't feel unnatural. It's not quite as smooth as I'd like, but there's also no lubrication, and there's a bunch of plastic dust and junk in there. So, and it did make the trigger hole here smaller, just a little bit, but not so much that it's like, oh boy, you have a hard time getting your finger in there. Just gonna grabbing it and yeah, I don't think it's gonna be a noticeable difference. We're getting real close to the back of things here. I'd originally kicked around the idea of skeletonizing the trigger, but that's not even an option now because we have so little material in the back, and with all the other weird stuff going on, I don't want to compromise the structural integrity there. So it's a cool thought, but you know, the thing with projects that you don't know how it's going to end is that you don't know how it's going to end, right? So I'm going to call this a trigger win. So I think I'm going to take it out and slather some DevCon on it and let it cure, and I'm going to hope it's good. So I think I'll get ready to do that, and yeah, good deal. Okay, gang. With the trigger situation, I tried super glue, and it worked good enough just for testing to make sure that it was actually going to work at all. But didn't really bond to the plastic, broke right off. So I tried DevCon, because DevCon sticks like crazy. Except to whatever this plastic is. Didn't even act like it was going to hold. After it hit setup, it just came right off. So I asked some questions around and said, what is this material that nothing sticks to it? And the answers I got back was that it could possibly be Delrin or HDPE, both of which are materials that are more or less kind of impervious to typical chemical bonding scenarios. And so there's a lot of responses of, can you do a mechanical connection? But due to the just the placement of where the joint is, let's put this back in. The joint is right on the, more or less the guide of where we need, we really couldn't like through bolt anything. We couldn't lap a bracket or anything on either side, because we need to have this free movement right in this area where the joint is, so the trigger can move. So that was out. I heard to try a particular kind of super glue that tends to be a little more hardcore. I wasn't going to bother trying that yet, just because, granted, the super glue that I did try, I used with a accelerator, which may or may not have made the bond not as strong, but in the situation I was using it in just for testing, it worked out okay. So that may have contributed, but one answer I got back suggested melting them together, and at first I thought, well, gee, that's silly. And then I thought, well, hey, that actually might work. So what I ended up doing, I just zoomed in all the way, yeah. What I have is I took two pieces, and I took this little kind of a cheap soldering iron that I'd kind of inherited, and it's got just a little tiny point on it, and I basically held the pieces together where they needed to be, and just kind of melted the area, started over here and just kind of swirled the material around. Basically, got the material soft enough that I could stir it together, and then I took some scraps of some of the pieces that I'd cut off, and basically introduced them into the joint, and kind of like brazing two pieces of metal together. You have your basically heat up both sides, then add in a new material, and it basically makes it all together. Yeah, it's a little ugly because I think the iron was a little dirty, and because I think it was melting the plastic a little bit, because I didn't know what the temperature was I needed to work with, because I was just kind of trying. So it's kind of gross looking, but it's a solid joint, and like I said, it's basically just stirring the material together at the joint. So even if they don't like stick together, you basically have the pieces, instead of fitting together like this, they're like in a big knot together. So I'm not going to try to break it, but I think you'd have a heck of a time getting these things apart, because it acts like one solid piece. So I'm pretty happy with that. And that means I was able to also sand it smooth, because it's not a glue joint like on the outside. It's basically the whole material itself is melded together. So I've been testing this a little bit, and because I had an additional layer, more or less, of material, I had to sand some of it down and do some filing. And there's going to be a little more fine tuning to come, but it's good and solid, and it doesn't tweak or creak, or doesn't give me any indication that it's not going to be perfectly happy. So I'm going to stick this back in here like this. I'll stick this guy in here. And operates actually very smoothly. So, I think at this point, the trigger assembly is complete. There'll be a little cleaning up to do closer to the final assembly of things. Go through, and I'll try to polish out some of the scratches and see if I can clean up some of the residue, and just make sure that everything's moving as smoothly as possible before we get into paint and stuff like that, and then the final prep. So, we have a trigger. essentially, if we have if we had this thing wired up, we'd be rolling. So, I think we can move on now.